Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're stepping into a vintage culinary time machine to unpack a truly fascinating piece of Americana. We're going to break down a traditional culinary skill using a historical artifact that might just change how you think about the jars sitting in your pantry right now. We're talking about the lost art of home fermentation, and we've got a very specific, honestly very charming primary source to guide us.
So what does a 1930s electric company know about making the perfect pickle? I mean, it sounds like the setup to a joke, right? But back in the early to mid-20th century, utility companies often had these home service divisions. Their entire goal? To teach homemakers how to actually use all those fancy new electrical appliances like modern ranges and refrigerators by giving them these fantastic, bulletproof recipes. In this explainer, we're going to dissect one of these original recipes to see exactly how our grandparents, or maybe great-grandparents, made traditional dill pickles from scratch.
And here it is, our source material for today. Now what's really cool here is the artifact itself. This is an original recipe card produced by the Detroit Edison company, specifically their home service division. It even has an old RA2100 phone exchange number printed right on it. Just look at the vintage charm of that typewriter text. It's practical, it's completely no-nonsense, and it holds the secrets to some serious old-school home fermentation. We're going to extract the data straight off this card and translate it into clear step-by-step instructions.
Let's start by breaking down the ingredient list. The recipe cleanly separates the produce from the brine elements, and the sheer scale here is just incredible. It calls for 35 to 40 fresh cucumbers and a full half-pound of dill. For the brine, you're going to need 2 tablespoons of mixed spices, 2 cups of salt, 2 gallons of water, yes, 2 whole gallons, and 2 cups of vinegar. You see, this isn't just throwing together a quick snack for the weekend. No, this is seasonal preservation. You're preparing enough pickles to last a family for months on end.
All right, let's move on to the prep and see how this all comes together. The instructions start out pretty basic. Wash and dry your 35 to 40 cucumbers. But then we get to this wonderfully vintage instruction. You're told to put a layer of dill and half of the mixed spices into a stone jar. A stone crock was literally the gold standard for home fermentation before glass or food-safe plastics took over our kitchens. Once you've got that flavor base laid down, you just pack in all your cucumbers and then top them off with the remaining spices and the rest of that massive half-pound of dill. Okay, so the absolutely crucial point here is getting the brine right. You take your 2 cups of salt, 2 gallons of water, and 2 cups of vinegar, and the card specifically instructs you to boil this mixture for exactly 2 minutes. Why? Well, this ensures the salt is totally dissolved and the liquid is briefly sterilized. But wait, you can't just pour it over the cucumbers yet. You actually have to let it cool completely to room temperature. If you poured boiling water over fresh cucumbers, you'd cook them, which would completely ruin that crisp pickle snap we're aiming for. So once it's completely cool, then you pour it right into the stone jar.
Now, if you know anything at all about fermentation, you know that oxygen is the absolute enemy. Notice this vital mechanical step required here. You must cover the cucumbers with a plate that is weighted down. The whole goal is to keep all 40 of those cucumbers completely submerged under the brine. Because if they float to the top and hit the open air, they're going to mold, for sure. A simple, heavy plate was the genius, low-tech solution of the era, and honestly, it still works like a charm today.
Next up is environmental control. Making pickles this way isn't just following a recipe, it's honestly a living science experiment. The Detroit Edison card explicitly states that you need to keep the jar at an even temperature between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the ultimate sweet spot for the lactic acid bacteria to do their magic. If it's too cold, the fermentation just stalls out. But if it's too hot, the whole batch can spoil or turn to mush, and nobody wants a mushy pickle.
And this brings us to one of my absolute favorite lines on the entire card. Remove scum each day. I mean, it is just so blunt. In modern fermentation guides, we'd probably politely call this something like skimming the yeast bloom or removing the calm yeast. But in the 1930s, Detroit Edison didn't mince words. It's scum, and you need to get rid of it. As the pickles ferment, this harmless but totally unappetizing layer of yeast and proteins forms on the surface of the brine. Daily maintenance is required to just scoop that right off. Let's quickly map out the timeline for this traditional process. Unlike those quick, vinegar-based refrigerator pickles we often whip up today in just a couple of hours, this method is an exercise in serious patience. Day 1 is your heavy prep. Then you enter this daily maintenance phase of temperature checking and, scum removal. Finally, you're awaiting an astonishing 2 to 4 weeks for the curing process to finish. That's how long it actually takes for the bacteria to naturally develop those complex, deeply sour flavors of a true deli-style pickle. So how do you actually know when that long 2 to 4 week waiting period is over?
Well, the recipe card gives us 3 distinct sensory clues to watch out for. Your pickles are fully cured and ready to go when they are 1. Crisp in texture, 2. Uniform in color, which means that bright, fresh cucumber green has transformed completely into an olive duller green all the way through, and 3. They must be well flavored with dill. Once they pass this 3-part test, congratulations, you're ready for the final preservation phase.
Now we're transitioning from fermentation to canning. You've made your pickles, but now you need to make them shelf-stable so they last. The instructions here pivot to a real sense of urgency. You pull the cured pickles from the stone crock and pack them into hot glass jars. Then you cover them with hot brine and you must seal them at once. The intense heat from the jars and the brine creates a vacuum as it cools, securely sealing those lids down tight.
Now, regarding that hot brine used for sealing, the card actually offers 2 distinct paths you can take. Option 1 is incredibly resourceful. You take that cloudy, leftover curing brine straight from your stone crock, strain it, and boil it for 5 minutes to sterilize it. Option 2 is to just make a completely fresh batch of brine from scratch. Boiling the original brine is great because it preserves all that deeply developed, funky fermented flavor, though going with a fresh brine might give you a slightly clearer-looking jar in the end. The choice was totally up to the homemaker.
Detroit Edison also added an important safety note here. For those thinking long-term, if these sealed jars are going to be stored for a long time, perhaps locked away in a dark root cellar for the winter, the card instructs you to process them in a water bath for 15 minutes at a simmering temperature. This extra step ensures that any lingering bacteria are completely neutralized, virtually guaranteeing the safety and longevity of your harvest.
Section 1. The secret variation, kosher pickles.
Just when you think you've got the standard dill pickle down, the card throws us a curveball. This is such a fantastic historical peek into how flavor profiles were adapting and expanding in American kitchens at the time. To achieve this so-called kosher style, as they put it, you need a bold new set of aromatics. Take a look at this list. 1 small clove of garlic, 1 bay leaf, a half teaspoon of mustard seed, 2 tablespoons of sugar for just a touch of sweetness, 1 piece of red pepper for a little kick, and a half cup of vinegar. This completely elevates the flavor profile away from the straightforward dill track we were on, bringing in spicy, sweet, and pungent notes.
And here's how you actually deploy those new ingredients. Spoiler alert, you don't ferment them for a month. Instead, you take all these aromatics and add them to roughly 1 to 1.5 cups of your strained brine. You boil that potent mixture for 2 minutes. Then you pour this supercharged, piping hot liquid directly over your plain, already cured dill pickles, right after you've packed them into their individual jars. It's essentially a hot, fast flavor infusion right at the very end of the process.
Let's bring this all back to the original artifact itself for a second. Take a close look at the very bottom right corner of the card. Tucked away down there is a single, tantalizing word in parentheses, over. I mean, it really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What other home ec secrets, clever tips, or utility company recipes were printed on the back of this thing? Unfortunately, the archival image only captures the front, leaving us with a really fun little historical mystery.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. We've decoded the massive ingredient list, we've learned the critical importance of that 85-degree sweet spot, and we face the harsh reality of daily scum removal. So I'll leave you with this question. Do you have the patience to try this 20th century fermentation method in your modern kitchen? It takes a full month of waiting, but the reward is a tangible culinary connection to the past, and honestly, a truly perfect pickle. Thanks so much for joining me as we unpacked this slice of history. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.